Upon eating this tasty mango, Paramathan, who enjoyed it so much, felt he would only be satisfied after having another one, and asked Punithavadiyar to also bring the other mango, as he assumed the other mango was still there. Punithavadiyar, who went away to fulfill her husband's wish, found herself in a very difficult situation. The great Punithavadiyar, who always treaded on the path of righteousness and truth, at the same time did not want to refuse her husband's request. How could she get at the unavailable fruit? Without realizing what she was doing, Punithavadiyar, who only had pure devotion towards the all-loving Lord, fully surrendered to the Lord's lotus feet and meditated on his divine form and grace. Amazingly, such was the mercy of the all-loving Sivanaar that a glorious mango fruit fell into her palms. The great Punithavadiyar was overjoyed and was very grateful for the Lord's merciful actions, and immediately went to her husband and served the mango to him. Paramathan then ate this divine fruit and could not believe how tasty it was. Such was the amazing taste of the fruit that it was greater than nectar. Thus, Paramathan questioned the source of this fruit and asked Punithavadiyar, "This is not the mango that I gave you. This fruit cannot be found in all the 3 worlds. Where did you get this from?" Punithavadiyar thought to herself and acknowledged that this grace of grace should not be divulged, but at the same time did not at once think to conceal the truth from her husband. Though she momentarily quaked in fear, she felt that it was her duty to share her true actions, and so, hailing the grace of the all-loving Lord, she shared all that had occurred. Paramathan felt unconvinced by these words and asked Punithavadiyar that, if it be by the divine grace of the effulgent Lord of matted hair, bring to me once again, by his grace, another flawless fruit. Thus, in response, the great Punithavadiyar prayed to the all-loving Lord and kindly requested him, telling him that if he did not grace her with another mango, her words would then be deemed false. The all-loving Lord obliged, and immediately another wondrous mango came to her. Punithavadiyar immediately placed it in her husband's palm, to fulfill his demand and prove her perspective true. Paramathan was astonished and could not believe his eyes. Shockingly, just a few moments after this divine mango was placed in his palm, it vanished and was nowhere to be seen. Paramathan froze in fear. He couldn't make sense of what had just happened, and in his mind felt that Punithavadiyar had supernatural powers, and thus was a goddess. He decided that it would not be right or respectful to live with her as her husband, and without sharing his true thoughts with anyone, he passed a few days mulling over what had happened, all the while maintaining his distance from the great Punithavadiyar, before persuading everyone that he will travel to foreign lands, do well in business and return with immense wealth, and so disguised his main motive of this plan being to part ways with Punithavadiyar. As such, his colleagues and family members helped with the preparations, and on a selected day he set sail on a ship which was built for him, fitted with abundant merchandise, and had a crew employed to operate it. Paramathan, who had planned upon which ports to visit, did so as planned and accumulated a lot of wealth in the process. After a few days spent in this way, still thinking that he was following the right course of action, and in complete ignorance to the pain and suffering he was causing his wife and close family members, unknown to them all, he returned to the coasts of his homeland, and instead of returning to the Chola kingdom, he moved into a town in the adjacent Pandya kingdom. He traded well, accumulated great wealth, and invested safely. While completely concealing his previous life, he married a daughter of a merchant of this new town he had settled into, and soon had a baby daughter with his second wife. Even then, he named this child Punidavadi, as he considered his first wife Punidavadi to be God, and thus felt he could not think of her as his wife. At the same time, in the fortified town of Karaikal, the great Punidavadiyar had been waiting patiently, and had continued with her duties perfectly. Some members within their family and friends had heard about reports that Paramadattan, who had set sail and voyaged around the seas, had not only returned but had settled permanently in a city in the neighbouring Pandya kingdom. And to confirm that this was true, Punidavadiyar's family had sent some family members there. To their astonishment, this news was found to be true, and from that moment their minds felt troubled. They all felt that they had the duty to take the righteous Punidavadiyar to the location where her husband had settled, and solve the issues that had risen. Such was the respect they all had for the great Punidavadiyar that her friends and relatives decided to carry her in a wonderful palanquin in which she was seated, and as a group journeyed together by foot for a few days, until they arrived near the location where Paramadattan was supposedly living. When Paramadattan received the message that Punidavadiyar and the rest of his family had arrived there, he froze in fear, before immediately venturing to the location where they had all gathered, alongside his second wife and young daughter. He then saw the great Punidavadiyar, bowed and said, "I thrive by your grace. The tender child by your grace bears your name." While saying these words, he prostrated flat on the ground in front of Punidavadiyar, alongside his young child and second wife. Punidavadiyar, who had always lived a righteous life, moved away immediately and stood shocked. Their family members who had travelled with them were also shocked, and questioned Paramadattan, asking him, "What makes you worship your beauteous wife?" Paramadattan replied, saying, "She is not a mere human, and is indeed a deity great." He then used this reason to try and justify his actions of leaving her and naming his daughter after her. He then added that they all should worship Punidavadiyar too. The family members stood perplexed. Hailing the Lord's lotus feet, Punidavadiyar, whose married life was taken away from her right in front of her eyes, realized the true objectives of life